And I think I would like to introduce the first keynote speaker, Dr. Xuan Sun from the Ohio State University. Yeah, come to the stand. So she will actually talk about language agents for scientific discovery, closer than ever, yet further than we think. So it's really fit into the thrust one that I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I also want to thank Dr. Heng Ji and Dr. Jiawei Han for the invitation. What a great honor to be here. So, AI scientist is a topic that I hold close to my heart. So I'm really excited to be here to share our recent work and some of my thoughts along this topic. Before I start, I want to acknowledge my lead students who did all the work behind the scene. More broadly, I want to give heartfelt thanks to the entire OSU NLP and AI group led by my colleagues, Dr. Yu Su and Dr. Sachin Kumar and myself. Overall, the entire group has been working on AI agents and agent safety with some foundational topics like reasoning, planning, and memory, as well as applied topics such as computer use agents and agents for science, including AI agents for chemistry, which I'm going to talk about. Notable work from the entire group, not necessarily led by me, include some widely used benchmarks, such as Mind2Web, which is a benchmark for web agents, and MMLI, which has been widely used for benchmarking multimodal LLMs. And we have also been doing more fundamental model and agent development, including CACT and HippoReg and also BioClip here. We have been conducting deep analysis into understanding why transformers suffer from some limitations. Later, I'm going to talk about the projects highlighted in red here. So in this talk, I'm going to discuss why we need language agents for scientific discovery and what is a truly transformative AI agent for science, and when can we have that, and how to progress towards that goal. I'm going to highlight two key lines of efforts. One is rigorous benchmarking, which is to carefully evaluate how good current LLMs and agents are in realistic scientific tasks. Another key line of effort I want to talk about is on fundamental understanding, where I advocated to gain deeper understanding into why how transformers work and their promises and limitations in some basic reasoning and generalization tasks. So let's start with why. Why scientific discovery as an application here? Well, the answer is pretty obvious, actually. So scientific discovery is one of the driving forces in human civilization, and it is perhaps among the most impactful things language agents or AI in general should do. And we do have a strong need for automation or semi-automation due to humans' cognitive limitations. For example, there could be thousands of papers published daily, and humans can't simply keep up. So then why language agents are suitable here? So first of all, what are language agents in the first place? You can think of them as LM-powered agentic system. So such an agentic system can reason and plan a sequence of actions and take actions that lead to state changes in the real-world environment. And then the real-world environment will provide some feedback to the LM or agents. And then the agents could use this feedback to correct some mistakes made in the previous steps or get informed about what to do next. And then the agentic system could also involve multi-agents that can communicate and collaborate with each other. So why language agents are well suited for scientific discovery? Well, first of all, language is the interface of science in the sense that scientific thinking lies in the papers, equations, notes, and hypotheses. All of them are in textual forms. And agents that can understand and generate language can deeply engage with such raw resources for science. And then discovery itself is fundamentally a multi-step and iterative process, which seems a very good problem for agents that can plan, take actions, self-improve. Lastly, we need cross-domain knowledge and reasoning abilities in order to solve real-world challenges. And LLMs, plus or enhanced by some search tools such as web search or PubMed search, can have access to those cross-domain multidisciplinary knowledge. Then, what is a truly transformative agent for scientific discovery? I'd like to think about the ambitious and perhaps controversial goal of the Nobel Turing Prize here, which is to develop a highly autonomous AI system that can perform top-level science and make discoveries that may be worthy of a Nobel Prize. So here, note that winning a Nobel Prize is more like a symbolic target, and the true spirit or true value of this challenge is to develop AI systems that can make discoveries continuously and autonomously, rather than winning any extra prize, including Nobel Prize. Anyway, so here we show a very simplified process of scientific discoveries that did win Nobel Prizes earlier. And in this process, we can see that search and optimization play a crucial role. And search and optimization are well suited for AI and for AI agents in particular. So we think that we can design AI agents that can be, like specifically designed to speed up the search and optimization process here. So the question is, when can we have such a truly transformative agent? To some extent, we already are using AI agents. We can ask them to find papers, answer questions about, scientific papers being published. Recently, there are some interesting studies that can help answer this question. So a study here seems to have found the so-called Moore's law for AI agents, which is the length of tasks that frontier agents can complete has been doubling since the past 7 years, since the last few years, every 7 months basically. So the article says, if this trend continues, then in 5 to 10 years, the agent can complete a large portion of tasks that would take humans days or weeks. Then a few weeks ago, Google announced this AI co-scientist, which is a multi-agent system that can generate novel, testable hypotheses across diverse disciplines. For example, it could generate completely novel drug repurposing candidates, such as the KIRA6 here for the AML disease. I'm not an expert in bioinformatics or chemistry. I don't know how novel this discovery is, but I heard informally that some results have been validated by human experts, and the corresponding articles are being reviewed under Nature or Science level journals. So, all these results seem to suggest that such a truly transformative agent seems to be on the verge, right? But here is the paradox. All these, our group and other researchers have been studying some particular behaviors of LLMs that suggest their potential limitations for scientific discovery, and that truly transformative agents based on such LLMs may be further than we think. Okay. Here is one such behavior. We find that if we use invalid reasoning steps in those chain of thought or COT demonstrations, the performance of LLMs won't be impacted much. So what does this mean? It means that the in-context it means that LLMs don't learn step-by-step reasoning from in-context examples. In fact, those in-context examples seem to be more like a format regularizer, which prompt LLMs or agents to follow the step-by-step format. And what does this mean for scientific discovery? It also means that LLMs may over-rely on their prior knowledge that is seen during pre-training. So if you present some information in the context that is differently defined than in the pre-training, or that is rare in the pre-training distribution, including those that are crucial for specifying certain task semantics, the LLMs may totally ignore that information. So another peculiar behavior we have found is when you try to have a discussion with LLMs, even if the LLM can get the correct answer to a question in the beginning, when presented with a wrong answer from the user, it can easily yield and admit that it has made a mistake. This is related to the phenomenon called LLM syncophancy discussed in the literature, where LLMs tend to yield or agree with the user. This has significant implications on using LLMs to discuss some open scientific problems. So one more puzzling behavior is the famous reversal curse, where LLMs are trained to, factual relations like A is B, fail to learn the reversal associations like B is A. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but all these peculiar behaviors suggest that current LLMs seem to have some fundamental limitations in reasoning and generalization, which can prevent us actually from building truly transformative agents on top of them. So then the question is, how exactly should we progress towards? I will first discuss our efforts on rigorous benchmarking, and then I will talk about our efforts on getting fundamental understanding into the foundational architecture. So let me present a concrete case on why rigor matters in the space of agents. So currently, the agent space is quite chaotic and oftentimes overhyped due to lack of rigor in benchmarking or claims. So recently, we conducted a careful study on web agents, which shows that the performance of a frontier agent could drop up to 59% in terms of success rate when evaluated on more realistic tasks under more accurate metrics. So my point is, we need to carefully assess the state of agents to make claims. Now, back to science agents. There are at least two paradigms for scientific discovery. Here we will focus on the data-driven discovery, where we assume scientists have a large amount of data sets to analyze, and they want to, say, write computer programs to build models or to analyze the data and draw conclusions. But no matter for which paradigm, we can see there are many components in this scientific workflow. So my advocate here is, before claiming there is an AI scientist that can automate the entire workflow end to end, we need to have a careful evaluation of agents on each core task in the scientific workflow. So today, our focus will be on the data analysis part and to understand how good current LLMs and agents are in terms of assisting domain scientists with writing programs, writing code snippets, basically, for data analysis. So the question is how to create a credible benchmark to evaluate the LLMs and agents' capabilities in that. And we put off a large interdisciplinary team effort to create this benchmark called the Science Agent Bench, which was reported by Nature earlier this year. So the problem setup is, suppose the agent is given a task in a certain discipline. For example, this task in bioinformatics about training a drug target interaction model using a certain data set. And the agent is also given some information about this data set. And optionally, the expert may also provide some domain knowledge that is needed to solve this task. Then the agent is expected to write a piece of code to build a model that uses this data set to make predictions as instructed by the user. Okay, so we want to benchmark agents' abilities like this. So the question is how to create, where do we get such tasks and the setup? So creating this benchmark is not easy. We designed several key principles here. The very first and most important principle is what we call ecological validity, okay? Which is to ensure every task we collect in this benchmark is scientifically authentic through expert co-design. So one creative idea we had is to leverage those peer-reviewed publications and extract tasks from those research projects. So we make sure every task is a real task that is used in a research project. And these tasks are, of course, validated by a large team of subject matter experts. And from currently we cover 4 disciplines right now, and we are going to expand the coverage here. So in addition, the benchmark has graded evaluation metrics, meaning that we have multiple evaluation signals. We are not just evaluate whether the generated program can be executed or not, but also look at the execution results. For example, the agent is expected to train a model, then what's the performance of the trained model? Does it meet the criteria or not? Does it, let's say, have a yield 90% accuracy and so on? And we also manually annotated those what we call step-by-step rubrics, just like how we grade students' written program and give a partial credit in case the program is not entirely correct. In addition, we have gone through multi-rounds of expert validation and proposed some strategies to mitigate data contamination, which is a serious issue currently in benchmarking AI models and agents. So here I show the performance of frontier LLMs, including the recent reasoning model called O1 and a few existing agent frameworks such as self-debug and OpenHands. These are widely used agent frameworks. So note that I'm showing a method's best performance among 3 runs. So the performance a bit higher than if you just give the method one chance to produce the result. So the best performance is 42% achieved by O1 under the self-debug framework. But I want to emphasize that O1 currently is super costly, 10 times more costly than other non-reasoning models such as Claude here. And for those cheaper models, we can see that Claude only achieved 17% under the direct prompting framework, or 32% under the self-debug framework. So there is still large room to further improve on those scientific coding tasks in those 4 disciplines. And not to mention automating the entire data-driven scientific discovery end-to-end. So now let's dive deeper into one discipline, which is chemistry here, and see how good LLMs and agents are at chemistry. here we focus the tasks that involve small molecules as they perform many important functions in our daily life, as you know. So there are many ways to represent a molecule. Here we focus on SMILES representation, which is a sequence of symbols to represent the 2D structure of a molecule. We created a large, high-quality data set called Small Instruct for training and evaluating LMs on real chemistry tasks that involve SMILES representations. So here is some more concrete information. This data set contains 14 tasks and over 3 million samples based on existing data sets. And it covers diverse types of tasks, including, let's say, name conversion here, like transforming SMILES to molecule formula, and some tasks about molecule captioning and generation, and some property prediction tasks, as well as chemical reaction tasks like forward synthesis or retrosynthesis. So through these tasks, we hope to test LMs and agents' knowledge and reasoning abilities for those chemistry tasks. So here are the takeaways. If you are thinking about using LMs directly for chemistry tasks, my advice is think again. Even for frontier models like O1, it still has a large gap, as you can see from the red and blue bars. There is still a large gap between this model and the state-of-the-art performance, which is achieved by non-LM-based methods. But those methods are specifically designed for each task. So those methods are not the same across different tasks. So, you can use our Small Instruct training set to fine-tune one single smaller model, say this Mistral 7B model. And then after fine-tuning, you can see from the yellow bars here that this fine-tuned smaller LM can perform much better than the O1 model across all tasks, and is getting closer performance to the state-of-the-art performance, as shown in the blue bars. But the advantage over those non-LM-based SOTA is that now you have one single model that can work for all tasks, rather than, okay, you need to spend efforts to develop a particular or specific method for each task. What if we equip those LMs with external tools? You might notice that some tasks, such as name conversion, we have specific tools or databases, and we can use, to find the answer. So what if we equip LMs with those tools? Can tools help improve the agent's performance? This is exactly what we studied in our ChemTool agent work. So basically, in our agent framework, we enable an LM, like GPT-4 kind of models, to leverage 29 tools in total, including web search tools, PubChem search tools, as well as some state-of-the-art machine learning models for molecule property prediction or molecule description, and so on. So the results are actually mixed. For specialized tasks like Small Instruct, where we do have specific tools available, our ChemTool agent, basically LM with tools, can perform much better than the backbone LM without tools. Okay? And the performance is comparable with the state-of-the-art performance we talked about earlier. However, we also test this agent framework on other widely used benchmarks, such as MMLU, SignBench, GPQA. Those benchmarks are more like exam-like questions, like high school exams or college-level exams. And surprisingly, Chem agent is worse than the backbone LM even. which is a bit puzzling to us. So through error analysis, we find that the agent makes completely different errors on these two types of tasks. Okay? It makes a lot more reasoning errors on those exam-like questions. Why so? Because those general exam questions require multiple pieces of fundamental knowledge in chemistry and are reasoning heavy with no specific tools available. And in such cases, adding tools will introduce noisy information or could be a distraction to the LM from the core reasoning part and introduce additional cognitive load. So overall, my takeaway on the explorations on the scientific tasks or chemistry-related tasks is that frontier LMs still lack chemistry-related knowledge and reasoning abilities. So to summarize this part, when creating a I talked about when creating a benchmark, we should consider the rigor of this benchmark in the sense that we should consider ecological validity, we should prioritize modular evaluation over end-to-end evaluation, at least before claiming there is an AI assistant that can do end-to-end automation. And we should try our best to avoid or mitigate data contamination. But that is not enough. In fact, I want to call for innovations in what benchmarks we should create. So if we need AI for scientific discovery, okay, we probably should think about that we need to test whether the AI or agents can question existing knowledge or come up with bold hypotheses rather than behaving like an A+ student that can just perform well on exam-like questions. Okay. So here I cite a related post from Tom Wolfe, who is the co-founder of Hugging Face, and feel free to check out more later. All right. So far, I have discussed our efforts on benchmarking and also some thoughts about how to create good benchmarks in order to proceed. Now I want to switch gears to discuss something more fundamental, something foundational about the transformer architecture, which is the backbone of LMs and also agents. Given the peculiar behaviors I just mentioned in the earlier part, there have been heated debates on can LMs reason, can transformers reason, how fundamentally promising or limited they are for reasoning tasks. And you will see some high-level argument about AI LMs can't reason, LMs can't plan. But my personal advocate here is to conduct rigorous experiments under controlled setup to understand how promising or limited the transformer architecture is in order to enable nuanced analysis and find they are promising or limited in what ways and avoid blanket statements. So more recently, Anthropic released a very interesting study called On the Biology of LMs. It's a very long report analyzing multiple behaviors, but one of the behaviors they analyzed is to see how LMs, one of their LMs called Haiku, what this LM did internally to perform this multi-step reasoning. Basically, you query the capital of some state containing Dallas, for example. What internal or inner working of the LM to derive the final answer without a chain of thought, without verbalizing the intermediate steps. In fact, 1 year ago, we conducted a very similar work called Grok transformers are implicit reasoners, which got quite influential last year. I'm now going to talk about it in detail. So let's start with what is implicit reasoning. basically, it is given a multi-step query. So here I will talk about the examples later. But basically, given a multi-step query, we want the model to directly predict the answer, okay, without verbalizing the intermediate steps. So for example, in this composition task, okay, suppose the model has already known the atomic facts, such as Barack's wife is this person, and this person born in this year. And we hope the model to directly derive the answer 1964 when asked when was Barack's wife born in. Okay. And similarly for this comparison task, suppose the model has already known this person's age is 78, this person's age is this number, and we hope the model to directly predict this person is younger or older or has a similar age as that person. Okay. So you might wonder, why do we care about the implicit reasoning? Isn't the COT or chain of thought now all the rage here? Okay. So I would argue that the default mode of large-scale pre-training, like the text data we have on the internet, has no chain of thought readily available, okay? And it shouldn't be required as well for training. Moreover, so the ability to implicit reason fundamentally determines how well the LMs can learn structured representation of facts and rules, okay, from the data. Okay. If a model could think internally, like do this implicit reasoning step by step internally, it will become more powerful and more efficient to compress and integrate information at scale. Okay. So prior work has exposed current LM's limitations in implicit reasoning. So for example, this paper, which is also quite influential here, showing that GPT-4 struggles at implicitly comparing entity attributes, despite it knows all the necessary facts. Okay? Like in this comparison task, it knows all the atomic facts about the age, but it fails to derive the conclusion that who is younger. And we got puzzled by these findings, and we want to dig deeper. As in, can transformers learn to reason implicitly? Or are there fundamental limitations in this architecture that prohibit robust acquisition of this skill? Okay. What factors control the acquisition of this skill? Is it a data skill, data distribution, or some kind of a model architecture design? We did a rigorous analysis using controlled setup. So let me explain how we set up the data in order to perform some rigorous analysis. In our data, we have two types of facts. One is called atomic facts. You can think about it as a knowledge graph, which I believe many of you are very familiar with. So basically, each edge in this knowledge graph could be regarded as an atomic fact. Okay? And then we have inferred facts. You can think of them as multi-hop compositions, or here we focus on two-hop compositions. Basically, given these two atomic facts, we hope to derive this the answer to this two-hop query, like head entity R1, R2, and then target entity T here. And in the composition task is like a wife and born in, then wife and born in here, like two hop queries. In the comparison task is about the attribute for this entity and then the attribute for the value for this other entity, and then they derive the conclusion on whether one is younger or older. So our training setting is very interesting, all right? Let me walk you through the details a little bit. So at the high level, during training, we provide a mixture of atomic facts and inferred facts. And we hope the model to be able to induce the latent rules, like how to derive the multi-hop effects based on the atomic effects. And now, at test time, given a new multi-hop query, and the model can apply those rules and to deduce the answer from the rules. More interestingly, we have this in distribution and out of distribution test set, or ID and OOD as shown here. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, we split all our atomic effects into two sets. One is used to create this in distribution test set. The other is to create this OOD distribution set, test set. So basically, for those in distribution set, the inferred effects there, okay, are, of course, novel combinations, but each atomic effect in those ID test set have been seen combined with the other atomic effects during training. Basically, the training and the test set, ID test set, the inferred effects there are obtained from the same atomic sets. And for the OOD test set, basically, if a two-hop query appears in the OOD test set, it means that the corresponding atomic effects have never been combined with any other atomic effect during training. We've only seen their atomic forms in the training data, no any other combinations. That's what we call OOD test set. And our model architecture is super simple. It's just the vanilla GPT-2 structure with 8 layers, because we want to avoid all the confounding factors, just focusing on analyzing the transformer architecture under this controlled setup. So there are many interesting findings from that paper. Let me focus on some most important ones. Let's first look at this green curve here. All right, which shows that transformers can have perfect ID generalization across both tasks. You can see that eventually the model achieves 100% accuracy on both tasks for in distribution test set. But this is achieved after an extended training period beyond what we call overfitting here, all right? Overfitting is the point where the model achieves perfect, like a training performance, but the test performance is still very low here. And we extend the training period for a lot more steps, actually 50 times more steps than the point where training performance achieves 100% accuracy. So this is what we call grokking. Okay, in the literature, this extended training period is called grokking. Okay, this is very interesting to us. And now let's move on to the blue curve, which shows the OOD generalization for both tasks. And we find that for the composition task, OOD generalization has never appeared. We never achieve, we never see the OOD curve gets lifted up, right? But for the comparison task, we can see that we actually observe OOD generalization performance, nearly perfect OOD generalization for the comparison task, which is quite, exciting to us at that time. So the third takeaway here is that we find it does not matter if we just scale up the absolute data size. Rather, it is the data distribution, which is the ratio between inferred versus the atomic fact ratio that matters. So it is more like the data distribution being critical than data size, which is in contrast to the previous work on analyzing why grokking happens. But important questions still remain, such as what happens during the grokking period? Why does it happen? Why does the level of generalization vary across both tasks? So this requires a deep look into the model. Okay? So we went on to analyze the internal workings of the transformer. We use some standard techniques in mechanistic interpretation literature, specifically the logit lens and causal tracing. Basically, for logit lens, you can think of it as trying to understand what a hidden state represents in the output space. And causal tracing, you can use it to derive the circuit of a transformer. Basically, the circuit here can be regarded as a computational graph going from input to output, where the edge in this graph measures the causal connection strength between a hidden state and a target prediction. So then after causal tracing, we can prune those edges that have weaker connections. So eventually, you will get a computational graph from input to output to understand which hidden state or which node in the neural network contributes to the prediction of the target. So once we do this analysis, we find two interesting generalizing circuits after grokking, okay, after the extended training period. But these generalizing circuits look very different for these two different tasks. Okay, for the composition task, we observe this so-called staged circuit, meaning that the transformer will first use the first 4 layers to retrieve the first hop knowledge, right? Like the bridge entity here. And then we'll use this bridge entity and then the second hop relation to derive the final answer, all right? For the comparison task, we find this what we call a parallel circuit. Basically, the transformer will use the first 4 layers to simultaneously retrieve the attribute values of each entity being compared here. So we are comparing the entity E1, E2 in terms of attribute A. So the first 4 layers will at the same time find the attribute values for these 2 entities, and then use the last 4 layers to make a decision on whether one's attributed value is larger, smaller, or equal to the others. Right? So 2 very different circuits found after the grokking period. So then why did grokking happen? We had more analysis in the paper, but very briefly, this is related to the circuit efficiency. Basically, during optimization after the overfitting point, the model continues to optimize the weight decay term in its objective function. See, the weight decay continues to drop, continue to get smaller and smaller. And this makes the model to get incentivized to be more efficient in terms of finding better parameters and store less facts as needed, but derive the rules that are necessary to, get the perfect performance on training. And why isn't OOD generalization always achieved in both tasks? And this, again, is related to the different configurations of the circuits for both tasks. Okay? More fundamentally, this is related to or stems from the non-recurrent design of the transformer. So for example, for the composition task, the second hop facts, all right, that are needed for the OOD queries in test set are simply not the same as the second hop during training. So the model has no incentive to store the second hop facts in the upper layers during training. So at test time, it simply cannot retrieve this second hop knowledge needed to answer the OOD queries. And based on these insights, we also did some small experiments showing that if we enable cross-layer parameter sharing, then the OOD generalization on the composition task can be improved. But overall, my summary of this work is that we did this mechanistic analysis in the context of multi-step reasoning to get a deeper understanding about transformers' architectural limits for multi-step reasoning. It has certain promises, but it also has limitations, and why these limitations for multi-step reasoning. Earlier, I mentioned the famous curse, reversal curse problem. Basically, LLM trained on one direction relational facts fail to answer the other direction. Okay, train on A is B, fail to learn B is A. So there has been a lot of follow-up work on the first discovery of this work, this phenomenon. But why? Fundamentally, why transformers suffer from, or LLMs suffer from this reversal curse? This is not clear at all. So last week, we released this work that provides insights into the course of this problem and possible solutions. Basically, in our work, we want to ask, are transformers fundamentally doomed for learning reversal? To our surprise, no. If we represent the input at the abstract concept level, say A, B, R here are abstract concepts, which means that they have a single learnable token embeddings. There's no curse. Transformers can learn such reversals perfectly, but only when we attach surface form names to A, B, and R, then the curse appears. Okay? So the real issue based on our analysis is the binding problem, which is a fundamental problem in neuroscience and AI. So our conjecture, more specifically, is conceptual binding, which means that the representations of the same entity will be inconsistent if they switch roles between the perceived subject entity and the predicted target entity. So their representations are inconsistent. Okay? And also because the entanglements of the representations of different entities. And those entanglements will get interfered during the training dynamics. So based on our analysis, we created a new model design inspired by Yang LeCun's JEPA model architecture and also memory layers. And that almost solves the curse, although our synthetic setup. Okay. We haven't found a real-world solution, solution for the real-world data using larger scale model architecture yet, but we think that's some promising signal. So, however, this doesn't mean the binding problem has been, solved completely. We need more systematic solutions because the current solution is more tailored to the reversal curse problem setup, and also is more like on the toy setting. But I think we hope this work can inspire, more follow-up work. So now you may wonder, why am I talking all this? Why does implicit reasoning and reversal skills matter in scientific discovery? Well, we think that science is inherently compositional, multi-step extrapolation. Okay? It requires training multiple pieces of information, creating new hypotheses. And the reversal problem or reversal thinking are actually common in science. We have these reversal problems in chemistry and other subjects. And also, I believe we need structured parametric memory of domain knowledge in order to be, train different pieces, different pieces of information and efficient in deriving, the scientific conclusions. Okay. Towards the end of this talk, I want to mention this important aspect in developing transformative agents for scientific discovery, which I didn't have time to cover in detail, which is the risks. Okay. In the short term, the wide adoption of AI tools in science will bring the risk of what scientists call we produce more but understand less. Where we think we have got an actual understanding of a subject matter X, or we think we have got all the hypotheses, but instead we are only getting hypotheses testable by AI tools, or we have got all standard points, or AI's standard points represent all. But all of this could turn out to be an illusion or a false belief. But in the long term, back to the controversial goal I mentioned earlier, I think it's critical to think about, do we even want a truly autonomous or transformative AI scientist? What roles will humans play at that time? And can humans supervise and can still supervise and control them? So to conclude, in this talk, I presented a paradoxical view where we are in terms of AI scientists, and why I think we are closer to agents that look like scientists, but still far from agents that reason like scientists. And also, I would like to call for innovations in benchmarking agents on both their capability and safety risks, as well as research to bring fundamental insights into why things work or why things don't work. With that, I would like to thank all the agencies that support our research, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I am Carl Edwards, a PhD student.
Hi, good to see you again.
Yeah, yes, well. So the question that I kind of wanted to ask, and something I've been thinking about, and I think your work is very related, is, so you kind of discussed both things we need to do to improve the reasoning capabilities of large language models, and I would consider that to be more of a general purpose large language model problem. But then you also discussed domain-specific models like GlossMol. And the question that I have been thinking about is, I mean, first of all, I guess you could say, can they be combined? But then also, should they be combined is maybe a more appropriate question. And so I'm wondering, should we leave those sort of basic reasoning capabilities to some general purpose large language model, and then we have some multimodal model, which is more of a tool almost? Or do we want a multimodal model with those reasoning capabilities? And I mean, obviously, if we could get it at the same level, that would be great. But do you think that we should aim for having these things be separate, or we should aim for these being combined?
Very good question. I think we should try to advance domain-specific reasoning ability without losing the general purpose reasoning ability. I think currently why language agents are capable of doing a lot of things or serving as the so-called generalist is because of their access to the internet skill knowledge, right? And they have seen all kinds of knowledge in the training hopper. I think we should keep that ability in order to train different pieces of knowledge that are, accessible or that exist in different disciplines. But that said, I hope we also advance the domain-specific reasoning ability. And now, are they conflicting with each other, or how do we reconcile these different abilities? I don't have a good answer right now. I think there is active, ongoing work. My bet right now is to I guess, more on the domain-specific side. So, for example, you can take open weight models and do a lot more fine-tuning on top of them, but make sure those general abilities are not getting, reduced or something. So that would be my personal bet at this moment.
Okay, and I guess the second, maybe quicker question is just, do you think that, let's say, scientific and simulation libraries are okay as is, or should they be redesigned maybe to enable better integration with LLM agents?
Mm-hmm. I feel right now, based on my experience, it's not the problem, the tool or simulation libraries. I feel it's more like the lack of knowledge, domain-specific knowledge and the reasoning abilities on the LM side. Maybe, like if you design in a certain way that could make the reasoning or, easier for the LM, but I feel currently it's more like improving the LM's ability for this subject, rather than improving the simulation libraries or the specific tools at this point. Yeah.
First off, thank you for your talk. I think it was a really good overview of the state of language models for chemistry, especially for experimentalists like me. My question had to do with, in the beginning, one of the three problems you raised. One was the sycophancy of language models, and that tied into the end of how if you use this for science, you might be under the illusion that you understand, but it's only up to what the model is telling you. What do you think can be done to fix this? Is this more architectural? Is this training based? And as a follow-up to that, I'm not sure if you've been following Google's latest model that launched like last week, Gemini 2.5. Based on what I haven't used it, but based off what I've read, I think it's better at this. Do you know if they've done anything to improve this? If so, what?
I think because the work I discussed is more like 1 year ago, or like there is a 1 year amount of time, and then people have been training better models. They certainly consider these behaviors in their training phase, and particularly the RLHF part can be used to sort of reduce such behaviors. But I think fundamentally it is not, it's still there. Okay, maybe you observe this less and less often, but it's there. I don't think there is any fundamental change at this point to completely eliminate such behavior. So that said, you still risk of this syncophancy, in discussing with LMs, and when you reach a conclusion, maybe it's not after thorough debate. Maybe the LM is still yielding or tend to agree with the user. Yeah, I don't think to my knowledge, there is no fundamental change that is eliminating this behavior.